"Impeach me and I'll sue you." That's essentially what President Trump is threatening. He tweeted today, "If the partisan Democrats ever tried to impeach, I would first head to the U.S. Supreme Court." This comes as a major showdown is brewing between the president and House Democrats. Lawmakers want to subpoena current and former White House aides over their statements in the Mueller report, specifically former White House counsel Don McGahn. The House Judiciary Committee has issued a subpoena for Mr. McGahn, but the White House is fighting back, arguing they will exert executive privilege over his testimony.
Well, that is their tool right now in order to block these testimonies from happening, in order to cover up any evidence that they do not want lawmakers to see. However, lawmakers are making clear that ship has sailed because they did not exert executive privilege before to withhold this information.
Honestly, it feels like we're watching Trump's claim to presidential immunity unravel right before our eyes in court. This isn't some brand new ruling. The courts are finally taking a hard look at Trump's actions and saying, no way does that immunity apply here. Judges are making it clear that he can't hide behind the position he once held when he's dealing with alleged private crimes. This has to be a wake-up call for him. His shield of immunity isn't nearly as strong as he thought it was.
That, you didn't use it before and it's too late now because we have a job to do. And as you've been talking about, as we've been reporting, that battle on Capitol Hill is only intensifying and Democrats are still split about how to proceed. So the House Oversight Committee, the House Judiciary Committee, they want to do their jobs and present the full picture. And of course, it's very different to read a report that someone else wrote as a result of that person's investigation, rather to investigate themselves. And so they want a chance to look at those documents, to have a complete unredacted copy of the report, and to talk to key witnesses. And of course, Don McGahn may be the key witness.
So let's take a moment to revisit the Supreme Court's significant ruling from July 2024, which is quite the foundation for what's happening now. The court ruled that when it comes to core constitutional duties like issuing pardons, commanding the military, or removing officials from office, presidents enjoy absolute immunity. This means no one can sue or prosecute a president for those actions. It's part of settled constitutional law. However, there's an important twist that many seem to overlook. The court also established that there's something called presumptive immunity for other official actions. This means that immunity is present, but not set in stone. It can be challenged. Judges have the power to examine the situation and determine whether something is truly an official act deserving of protection or not. Now, the big takeaway from the ruling is that when it comes to private conduct, the president has absolutely zero immunity. None at all. If a president engages in behavior outside their official responsibilities, and that behavior would be considered a crime for anyone else, then they can definitely be prosecuted. The law applies to everyone, and this couldn't be clearer in the Supreme Court's decision. Fast forward to today, and that's exactly the situation facing Trump and the courts. The judges are scrutinizing his actions and determining that many of them are indeed private conduct, not tied to his roles as president. For instance, they're looking into instances where he destroyed evidence in his private office or obstructed justice. Trump's been up to some questionable stuff, trying to hide his assets from the government. But here's the deal. He was just a private citizen when he did these things, not acting in his role as president. So he doesn't get that automatic immunity. It means he can actually be held accountable for his actions. Take the classified documents case, for instance. He took those documents to Mar-a-Lago and stashed them in his private office, refusing to give them back to the government. He even tried to throw a wrench in the works by hiding them from federal agents. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals looked into this and pointed out that this wasn't official presidential behavior. It was private conduct, plain and simple. Private citizen Trump, not President Trump, is the one who took those documents. And that means he has no immunity. He can't just hide behind the title of being president. The same goes for the evidence destruction case at Mar-a-Lago. There's body cam footage that shows him destroying evidence, shredding documents right in his private bedroom, and obstructing justice before federal agents could step in. Courts are seeing it the same way. This isn't how a president acts within official duties. It's what a private citizen does in their own home. And that means he can absolutely be prosecuted and held accountable. What's really significant here is this whole immunity framework set up by the Supreme Court in July 2024 is now being applied to Trump's actions in real time. Whenever courts assess that framework against Trump's private crimes, he's coming out on the losing end. He has no protections. He's laid bare. This is a big deal because it shows he's vulnerable now, which means he can be prosecuted for his wrongdoings. Trump's been making a case that he's immune from prosecution for actions taken while in office, but the courts are diving into what he actually did. And they're clearly saying, nope, you're not immune for this. This is private conduct, not official. He's not protected. And it seems like the legal shield he hoped for isn't holding up. Everything seems to be unraveling for Trump all at once, doesn't it? He's facing impeachment in Congress, and the landscape looks pretty grim for him in the swing states, where he's trailing by huge margins. His approval rating has plummeted to a mere 31%. Military leaders are openly protesting against him, and we even have Pentagon officials leaking classified information. To make matters worse, his main attorney has thrown in the towel, calling the case unwindable, while body cam footage appears to show him destroying evidence. And just when he thought he had immunity, thinking he could dodge accountability simply because he's president, the courts are stepping in to say otherwise. They're making it clear that immunity doesn't apply when it comes to the private crimes he's been accused of. It turns out that Trump is actually vulnerable to prosecution. He's not protected by the very office he occupies. And this change is going to impact all the legal challenges he's currently facing. Take the fraud case in New York, for instance. No immunity there since it's tied to his private business dealings. Then there's the obstruction case linked to the Mar-a-Lago raid. Again, no immunity protects him there because it involves his private actions. And as for the classified documents case, Trump doesn't get a pass for taking those documents to his home either. That's also considered private conduct. In fact, every single situation where Trump is accused of committing a crime as a private citizen means he has no immunity whatsoever. He can no longer hide behind his presidential office or claim he's above the law. Courts are making it unmistakably clear that his conduct is private and consequently not shielded by immunity. Trump is exposed, vulnerable, and now fully subject to the law. This solid legal framework from the Supreme Court is quite robust, rooted in the Constitution, and firmly established since July 2024, and judges across the nation are consistently applying it as they evaluate Trump's actions. So, let's break this down a bit. The Supreme Court just ruled, and it's making things pretty tough for Trump legally. They were really clear about it, saying that certain actions are private, and therefore don't come with the kind of presidential immunity he might expect. Understanding this immunity framework is key to seeing why Trump is in such hot water right now. To start, let's talk about absolute immunity. This is the highest level of protection a president can have, covering the core powers specifically granted to the presidency. We're talking about actions that only the president can take because they belong solely to the executive branch. For example, the president has absolute immunity when it comes to issuing pardons. So, if Trump pardons someone, that's completely protected. It can't be challenged legally. The same goes for military commands. A president can make military decisions without worrying about being prosecuted for those choices. Plus, when it comes to firing cabinet members or officials, the president can do that without giving a reason. And once again, it's protected from legal repercussions. These powers are clearly defined in the Constitution and are completely shielded from lawsuits or prosecution because the Supreme Court has established that they are absolutely immune. But here's where things get interesting. Trump's current legal troubles don't involve any of these protected actions at all. He's not facing charges for any military decisions or for issuing pardons. Instead, he's being prosecuted for things like destroying evidence, committing fraud, and obstructing justice, none of which fall under those core constitutional powers. There's a clear line between what counts as presidential duties and what doesn't. And it turns out some of Trump's actions are definitely on the wrong side of that line. You see, while there's something called presumptive immunity for actions a president takes in their official role, it's a bit more complicated than just saying that they're protected from everything. Presumptive immunity means the president is assumed to be immune for things that fall within the outer limits of their official duties. For instance, if the president is chatting with the Department of Justice in an official capacity, that might be covered under this kind of immunity. But it's not a free pass. This is where a judge steps in. A judge can take a look and decide if the action really was part of official duties and whether immunity should kick in or not. If the circumstances are serious enough, a judge can actually override this presumption. Even if something seems like it might be an official act, if it's blatantly illegal or harmful to the country, immunity just doesn't apply. It's important to remember that presumptive immunity can be challenged, and it definitely doesn't mean a person can't be held accountable. Now, looking specifically at Trump's actions, they simply don't fit into this umbrella of official conduct. For example, destroying evidence or shredding documents in his private office, those aren't tasks done in an official capacity. Similarly, obstructing justice by trying to hide classified documents from the government isn't a presidential duty. That's more like something a private citizen would do. All of this behavior lives outside the realm of presidential immunity, leaving Trump's actions categorized more as private crimes, which means he can't hide behind any protections at all. The courts are really emphasizing this distinction, making it clear that what Trump did was personal conduct rather than anything official. So, when it comes to Trump's actions, we're talking about his private business dealings here. And that's where things get tricky. If he's acting as a private citizen rather than in his role as president, he actually has no immunity. That means he can face prosecution just like anyone else. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals made this really clear in February of 2026 when they turned down Trump's claims for immunity in the classified documents case. They stated that taking classified documents and obstructing justice simply isn't covered by any protection. The court pointed out that Trump was acting as a private individual, not as the president. So immunity doesn't apply. And you know what? The same rationale goes for the case involving the Mar-a-Lago evidence destruction. Trump didn't just destroy evidence, he shredded documents and obstructed justice. And that falls under private crimes, not official duties. So immunity isn't going to protect him here either. This is pretty rough for Trump because he's been leaning heavily on these immunity claims, thinking they would help him dodge his legal challenge. He's been insisting that as president he should be untouchable, but courts are clearly saying otherwise. They are establishing that immunity doesn't cover private conduct. And this isn't just some overreaching activism from the courts. It's all based on the Supreme Court's guidelines from July of 2024, which the lower courts are applying properly. The Supreme Court indicated that there's full immunity for core constitutional acts, but Trump isn't being prosecuted for those. They also mentioned presumption of immunity for official acts, but Trump's actions don't fall under that category either. When it comes to private acts, the Supreme Court decided there's zero immunity, and that's where Trump stands, hitting that zero immunity mark for his private actions. It really is that straightforward. And this applies to every case he's dealing with, including the New York fraud case, where he again has no immunity because, well, fraud is just private conduct, plain and simple. It looks like things are really spiraling for Trump right now. He's facing serious trouble with all these legal issues. And it turns out he can't rely on his office to shield him anymore. The courts have made it clear. When it comes to his private conduct, he has no immunity at all. Take the obstruction case, for instance. It's really all about things he did on his own unrelated to being president. And the same goes for the classified documents case. Bringing those to his private home is just more of that personal conduct that the law doesn't overlook. So, in every situation where Trump is accused of acting as a private citizen, he can't hide behind presidential immunity. He's now exposed to the same legal scrutiny as everyone else, which is a pretty big deal. This shift is happening when he's already juggling a mess of political headaches. Impeachment talks are buzzing in Congress. He's losing ground in swing states, and his approval ratings are taking a nosedive. To add to the chaos, he's had his lead attorney throw in the towel. We've seen footage of him seemingly destroying evidence. And there's a growing mutiny among military leaders. And now with the courts ruling against him, everything's falling apart. What's key here is understanding that presidential immunity isn't a free pass to do whatever one wants. It's limited and only applies to actions directly tied to the duties of the presidency. If it's about private crimes or misconduct, that shield just doesn't apply. Trump's actions like destroying evidence in his private office, moving classified documents home, attempting to hide assets, and committing fraud with his private business, all of these are not official presidential actions. They're personal mistakes. And because of that, he's far from untouchable. He can absolutely be prosecuted and held accountable. Simply put, he is not above the law. Every prosecutor looking into Trump's actions has a strong case. Take the New York prosecutors investigating the fraud case. Since fraud is seen as private conduct, they can go after Trump. Then there's the federal prosecutors looking into classified documents. They can hold him accountable because taking those documents home is also private conduct. And we can't forget about the federal prosecutors on the obstruction case, who can prosecute him for destroying evidence, which again falls under private conduct. Simply put, Trump can't hide behind his presidential office in any of these situations. He can't claim immunity from prosecution or argue that the Constitution protects him from facing the consequences for his actions. The issue is pretty significant for Trump because he's been banking on immunity to escape his legal troubles. He's been insisting that presidents are untouchable in the eyes of the law, but the courts are saying otherwise. They're applying the framework set out by the Supreme Court, concluding that he has no immunity related to his private misconduct. This framework will consistently apply to all of Trump's cases, leading to the same outcome. Whenever any court examines his actions, they'll determine that he's engaged in private conduct, meaning he has no immunity. This leaves him exposed in every case he's facing. The repercussions of this are monumental and serious. Having no immunity means Trump can be convicted in New York for fraud. He could face convictions in federal court for obstructing justice, as well as repercussions for mishandling classified documents. The reality is, he could even end up in prison, which means his presidential office offers him no shield. He faces genuine consequences for his actions. On top of all that, Trump is already in deep trouble. He's facing impeachment in Congress and taking hits politically. His lead attorney has quit, and we've got body cam footage showing him destroying evidence. Military leaders are refusing to comply with his orders, and the Pentagon is leaking classified information. Even Fox News seems to be turning on him. Everything is crumbling around him. And now the courts are making it clear that he cannot escape through claims of immunity. They're making it evident that he's not above the law. And that's a hard blow for him. So, it looks like Trump has finally come to terms with the fact that he's cornered. He doesn't have any legal shields left, which means he's completely exposed. This is really going to shake up his political standing. When folks in Congress see the court shutting down Trump's claims about immunity, it's going to change everything. They'll realize that he's vulnerable to prosecution and that he could actually end up going to prison. Their trust in him is going to crumble, leading them to think he must be guilty. In that light, support for impeachment and removing him from office will start to grow. If Trump were truly innocent or hadn't done anything wrong, he wouldn't be relying on immunity to save him. His hope for immunity shows how desperate he is. That desperation is telling. It suggests deep down, He knows he's done wrong. He's aware that the courts are not going to back him up. They're clearly stating that immunity doesn't cover the kind of private crimes he's involved in. He's going to have to confront the reality of his actions and face a trial. This is a pivotal moment for Trump. It marks the point where he realizes there's no way out, no escaping accountability. He once thought he could use his position to hide from legal consequences, but courts are pointing out that it doesn't work that way. The bad news for him is that this is the beginning of the end. His political clout collapses completely once he's exposed. As he becomes more vulnerable, the voters will start to turn away. We're likely to see Congress move toward impeachment, and the Senate following suit with a conviction. It all boils down to one stark reality. Trump committed private crimes, and those aren't protected by immunity. It's really quite something to see the courts stepping up and establishing that not even a president is above the law. Trump is just like everyone else when it comes to facing legal consequences. And now we're seeing that principle really being enforced. The courts are holding him accountable. And honestly, this seems to be the framework that could lead to his downfall. All the signs point to the fact that this legal principle might just result in Trump's conviction and removal from office. For the first time, it feels like the rule of law is truly catching up with him. With the way things have been unraveling for Trump lately, it looks like he might not come out on top this time. He's going to be held responsible for his actions, and there's really nothing he can do to change that. Now, this is where things start to get serious. It's truly the end game, and I'm definitely going to keep an eye on how this unfolds.